Hey everybody, and welcome to week 8 of the Piano Dojo weekly piano proficiency series. Today we're going to do our usual syncopation warm-up. We're going to continue on with our chord inversion exercises. We're going to move on to the white, black, white family this week. And then this is getting pretty easy, and so we'll have a little extra time at the end to talk about one of my favorite things in the world, and that is the blues. So with our sight reading, we're going to be doing the sight reading blues today. All right, so without further ado, let's head on over to the drum and get warmed up. Okay, let's get started on our week 8 rhythm warm-up. We're going to start with our metronome at 40 BPM, and as usual, that is going to symbolize the downbeats. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, switch your hands. Here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3. Top line hands together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. All right, watch out for that last measure there. I left a lot of space, and most people have trouble not playing rhythms but leaving space. All right, so now we're going to move on to line 2. We're going to scooch the metronome on up to 45 BPM, and now we're going to hear it on the upbeats. So it's going to go like this. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, switch hands. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and there we are. Excellent. All right, now we're going to continue with the metronome on the upbeats, except we're going to put the metronome onto halftime. So we are going to speed up to 50 BPM, but the metronome is going to be on halftime, so therefore it's going to be at 25. And we are going to hear the metronome on the first and the third upbeat. All right, so that goes something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, and switch your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 and 2, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3 and 4 and. Okay, excellent. Now last but not least, we're going to speed the metronome up to 30. And since it's on halftime, what that means is that we're going at 60, it's going at 30, and now we're going to imagine that the metronome clicks are on the upbeats of the 2 and the 4, the second and the fourth upbeat. All right, go something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3. Hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. All right. Now that we're all warmed up, let's head on back over to the piano. Okay, now that we're all warmed up, let's go ahead and get started on today's inversion exercises. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to the circle of fifths. And as you can see, we have the green, white, white, white family that we were looking at last week. This week, we're going to move on over to the red family, which is the white, black, white family. All right. Now, before we actually jump into the exercise, let's go ahead and talk about what the relative minors of each of these three chords are going to be. Now remember, the relative minor is the do to la relationship. So one way to do this would be to look at D and say D, E, F, sharp, G, A, B. That's the sixth note, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, right? And so we would know that the la of D is B, all right? However, one thing you may notice is that everything on this circle, including the key signatures themselves, moves in fifths, right? And so it's the same with these relative minors. So one thing you could also do is you could say, well, what is the fifth of B? And that would be F sharp. Now I know that on the actual circle, when we get to B, we switch to G flat. But in this case, we are still on the sharp side of the circle. And so we're going to refer to this as F sharp. And if we continue in that way, the sixth note of E or the fifth note of F sharp is C sharp. All right? So we'll be going over our D, A, and E major chords along with the B, F sharp, and C minor inversions. Let's go on over to the piano and take a look. All right, let's take a look at these inversions on the keyboard. We're going to start with D major in our right hand. So we're going to start with our D, we have our F sharp and our A. You can see that's why we call this the white, black, white family. And honestly, I feel like when you start to add black notes, it makes it a bit easier because sometimes when all you have is white notes, you really have no frame of reference. It all kind of looks the same. But in this case, you have that black note in the middle that is a really great signpost. All right, so we're going to do this, these inversions in our right hand first. It's going to go like this. Now let's do the left hand. And finally, we're going to put it hands together. Okay, let's move down to the La. And let's play the B minor inversions with our right hand. we're going to switch to our left hand. And finally, we're going to do hands together. All right, now I'm moving through these at a good clip because, you know, just for the sake of time in this video, but you can take your time with these. You can wait and visualize the next step as long as you want before you move to the next inversion, all right? Now let's move on from D. Let's take a look at A major. We're going to start that with our right hand first. All right, let's do our left hand. Excellent. And now we're going to do our hands together. All right, now to the law. We're going to do F sharp minor inversions with our right hand. All right, let's do that with our left hand now. And now we're going to do it hands together. You can hear it got a little muddy down there, and that's a sacrifice I have to make with this tiny little MIDI controller keyboard that I'm using. So if you want, you can always try to use your ear to find where on the piano these chords sound the best. You'll notice as you get lower, you don't want to be playing chords too far beneath middle C because it sounds muddy, right? So, you know, when you're practicing on your 88 key keyboard, make sure that you make use of all those 88 keys and that you're putting these chords somewhere where they sound good and not necessarily muddy, okay? And now finally, we're going to move on from A major and we're going to look at E major, all right? So this one's going to go like this with our right hand first. Now our left hand. And finally, hands together. All right, and now we're going to go down to the law. We're going to play C sharp minor. We're going to do that with our left hand. I'm sorry, did I say left hand? I'm obviously doing this with my right hand right now. Now we're going to do it with our left hand. And finally, we're going to put our hands together. There we go. So like I said, take your time with those. And for those of you who want to go the extra mile, let's do a brief review of these three scales. All right, so first we're going to take a look at D major. And B minor. All right, let's take a look at A major. Down to F sharp. And finally, let's do E major. C sharp. All right, so there we go. We have all of our inversions of the white, black, white family and the relative minors and a little scale review. And now we can get to something that I'm very excited about, and this is the blues, all right? Now, when you talk about the blues, we are going to do a dive in and talk about the theory, but it's important to remember that the most important thing about the blues is its cultural roots, all right? So although we're gonna be focusing on theory and all of this pedagogical stuff today, it's really important to remember that the blues is a cultural phenomenon, and it is a way of consummating adversity, right? So any negative emotions that you're feeling, this is historically a great way to consummate those emotions by confronting them and releasing them, right? It's an amazing tradition that is very American. I encourage you to look further into the roots of the blues and the culture of the blues because it's amazing. It's a very powerful form of music, and sometimes I feel like we don't do it justice when we sit here and we just look at the theory and the chords, because that's not what it's really about. Although, as people who want to learn how to play our instrument, we do need to know that. So now we will be reducing the blues down into some theoretical language, all right? So the first thing about the blues is that it's always in groups of 4 measures, right? So as you can see, we have 4 measures, 4 measures, and 4 measures, and one of the most common amount of measures that you'll see in the blues is the 12-bar blues. I'm sure you may have heard of the 12-bar blues. Bar refers to measure, right? And sometimes you'll have 8-bar blues. Sometimes you may have the 4-bar blues, but most common you're going to have the 12-bar blues. Now, our blues, as you can see in the key signature right here, is in the key of C. And every single blues, the entire genre, uses 3 chords, all right? Now, these can be fleshed out. You can add other things to put the icing on the cake, if you will, but the cake of the blues is always 3 chords. Obviously, we have our 1, right? So in this case, that is our C chord. Now, the next chord is the 4 chord, all right? And so in this case, that's gonna be the F chord, F-A-C. And finally, you guessed it, no song is complete without the 5 chord, so we have our G, B, D. And one thing you may notice is that those 3 chords are the only major chords in our major scale, right? When we looked at our Harmony 101 and we found all of the chords inside of a scale, well, the 3 major chords are the 1, the 4, and the 5. And that's what we use to make the blues. And also, if we see here we have C, F, and A, let's take a quick peek at our circle of fifths. Well, look at this. This is the blues right here, right? So any group of 3 chords that you circle is the blues. That's pretty sweet, right? All right, now let's take a look at this, all right? We've talked about the harmony. We've talked about the amount of measures that we usually have. But now, let's talk a little bit about the actual style and the pattern, all right? So a lot of styles in music are defined by the bass player, right? The bass voice is very important because not only does the bass voice sound, it's the most important note in the harmony, right? It defines all the other notes above it, right? By giving us the roots usually. But also, it usually also gives us rhythm. It usually is on the downbeat, showing us where the rhythm is. So the bass pulls together the rhythm and it pulls together the harmony and it syncs them up together, all right? Now, in this particular bass line, what we can see is something that I like to call the roll, okay? And that's because we are rolling a chord and it's a basic C chord. Now it's very low, right? Some of those notes are low because we are playing in the bass, but you'll notice that we can see that chord shape, right? Like right there, we can see that we have line, 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 right? And the note that's missing in the middle is right here on this E, right? We have our C, E, and G, and then we have this one little embellishment right here, all right? So let's take a look at what that would look like. So here's our C chord, all right? Our open C chord. Here's that D sharp, and here's the E, like that. Now the reason that I call this the roll is because it feels like you're rolling once you get that pattern going. Right? And if you're rolling, what genre might that fit into? Something called maybe rock and roll, right? And so this is this bass pattern was developed in a style called boogie woogie, which eventually became rock and roll. And I like to think that this rolling pattern had a say in the name of the actual putting the roll into the rock and the roll, right? So we have that roll. And you can see how by knowing about chords, it makes it so much easier to access these notes, because at first you're like, oh my gosh, they're so low, I don't know what that added sharp is. But once you understand that this is just an embellishment of a simple white, white, white chord of the C chord, right? Then it makes it very easy. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through and we're going to make sure that we know which chords we're gonna be playing. So we're starting out with our 1. We have another 1 right here. Now, down here, we're going to go up to our 4, okay? So the exact same thing, you barely even need to read those notes because we know what 3 notes are in an F chord, and all you need to do there is to roll that F chord, all right? Now that brings us back to our 1 chord right here. Finally, we get to our 5 chord, which is our G chord, and as you can see, it is also being rolled. And we're going to walk back down nice and slow back to our 4 chord. And then we have what's called the turnaround to bring us back to our 1 chord, right? I put a little jazzy lick right there. It's actually something that we saw in a song that we played earlier called March, where we drop from the do down to the mi and we walk back up. So we've actually seen this already in classical music. And then I gave you a fun jazz chord right here, all right? So what I would call this is the C7 sharp 11, right? Now, oh man, when people see these jazz symbols, sometimes their eyes glaze over. You have no idea what it means. But the thing is that in jazz, the secret is that these complex voicings are actually made from putting 2 simple things together, right? So it's more like Legos. You can make an impressive looking spaceship out of Legos, but if you really get down to it, each Lego is just a brick, right? So to make a C7 sharp 11, all we've done is something that we have already seen in the left hand by playing the dominant 7th chord that we've talked about, right? The flat 7, where we flatted the 7 of C, which is B flat, and then we have the root right here, right? So we've talked about that before. And then on top of that, we have just simply put a major chord. And in fact, it's one of the major chords that we're looking at today. It's the D major chord, right? So if you want to make this nice, cool C7 sharp 11 sound, then all you have to do is stack a dominant 7th with a major chord built off of the ray of that same chord. Okay, now as you can see, this harmonic scheme right here, we have 4 bars of 1, we have 2 bars of 4, 2 bars of 1, we go to the 5, the 4, and the 1, right? And that is, in the 12-bar blues, the most common progression that you will see, all right? You can embellish it all you want, you can add more chords onto it and change things around, but the foundation of the blues is always this 4 bars of 1, 2 bars of 4, 2 bars of 1, 5, 4, 1, all right? Pretty simple stuff right there. Before we get started, the last thing I'm going to talk about is what is going to be going on in the right hand, and this is a pretty exciting thing because we're going to be using something using something called the blues scale, all right? And the reason we call it the blues scale, you can see that we've put in an accidental there. And by adding that little half step, it adds a little bit of bluesy tension, and we call that the blue note, right? So in my right hand, you can hear that if I were to play all the notes without the sharp, so I'm gonna leave out this D sharp right there, and if I just played C, D, E, and G, and A, that sounds all right. It's very C, but when you add this D sharp, you get blues, right? And then we come back down. All right, excellent. So the blues scale is a lot of fun, and we'll be seeing more of this. But without further ado, let's try to play this and see what happens, all right? Here we go. There you have it, very nice. So take it nice and slow, get that blues going. If you want to purchase this music, if you want to purchase a circle of fifths, if you want to get any documents that you see on any of these videos, you can always find those on my website, pianodojo.com, all right? But until next week, happy practicing, and I'll see you next time.